Okay, well, thank you very much indeed. I think we are now live streaming, so welcome to our Cabinet meeting following on from the Cabinet Advisory Panel held on Monday, the 26th of October. We do have pretty much everyone here, with the exception of Councillor Anne Allen, who's just informed us that she had some technical problems, and we've resent the link to her, so she might be joining us as the meeting goes on. I'll accept that as the first apology, but as I say, I know she's trying to join us. Are there any other declarations of interest that any member wishes to make this evening? Okay, thank you. And then confirmation of the minutes held on of our Cabinet meeting held on the 24th of September. Members have those in front of you. Are members happy to accept their fair record? Yeah, okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Urgent items. I'm advised there are no urgent items this evening. I think that's right, Mr. Twyman.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And item 5 is to receive the minutes of the Cabinet Advisory Panel held on Monday, chaired very ably, I'm sure, by Matthew Davis. I hope we've all had those minutes sent to us now. It's a very big agenda tonight, both in terms of the number of items and also the weighty nature of them. So I'm pleased to see that the Cabinet Advisory Panel did a fairly diligent job on Monday. I don't know how long the meeting when did it say when did it finish? 6:18. So they're quite a long old discussion, which is good to see. So you've got those in front of you. Thank you. Item 7, straight in then to our main items. The first item, item 7, is the test and trace standard payments and discretionary payment scheme policies. And this was a subject of some discussion at the CAP, but we'll take it first of all. Who's to speak to this? Mrs. Martin, is it you?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. No, you're still muted. Press your button.
Can you hear me now?
That's £10 fine for that.
As part of the COVID-19 response, the government announced a test and trace and support payment scheme, which was to be administered by local authorities. So as part of the scheme, individuals are entitled to a payment of £500 if they've been told to stay at home and self-isolate by NHS test and trace, are employed or self-employed, are unable to work from home and will suffer an income loss as a result of having to stay at home and not being able to work, and are in receipt of one of a number of qualifying benefits. There was also the option, if they weren't in receipt of a qualifying benefit but met all the other criteria, that they may be eligible for a £500 payment under a discretionary scheme. So the council has now set up its schemes because it had to go live by the 12th of October. So this report is just asking members to note the schemes that have already been put into place. And the policies of the two schemes are at Appendix A and B. Any payments that the authority makes as part of the standard scheme will be fully reimbursed by government. However, with the discretionary scheme, we've got a set pot which we're allowed to spend, so we can't exceed that pot. So therefore, we're asking members tonight to give me delegated authority in consultation with the leader so that we can amend the discretionary scheme if need be to make sure that we keep within that spending allocation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Done it myself now. Cool, thank you so much. I think the Cabinet Advisory Panel, their main line of inquiry was regarding those members who were on 0-hour contracts and otherwise self-employed or had difficulty accessing the internet. And I don't think there's a need for an answer, because I think it's just like everything we're doing at the moment. We're here to help, and that number is available. The 01322 343434 number should be the kind of general helpline number. If anybody wants assistance, start from that. Is that what we're really saying? I mean, we'll do whatever we can within the scope of the law and the regulations to help. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Although we're really encouraging applications online, if someone's having real difficulty, then yes, they can contact us and we'll help them through the process.
That's fine. Okay. Can I take this opportunity to welcome Anne? Sorry you couldn't get on at the beginning, Anne. We were going to. I was very keen to wait for you, but Chris Shipham said that we should proceed, so that's what we did.
And understand.
And understands. Okay. Fine. Are there any other members on this item? Yeah, please, Richard.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sarah. The process looks very thorough, very good. I had a quick test of it yesterday, so Googled it and then went through the NHS gov.uk onto our website, and it's all very clear there, and then the application form comes up fine, so it looks like it's working. With that in mind, have we had many at the moment, and is the process working okay from our end? And my other question is, the funds that are allocated for the discretionary scheme seem very precise. So do we know how the amount was allocated per area? Was it just based on population, or was area risk involved or anything like that? Do we know?
Okay, thank you. Well, I know that as at Friday of last week, we had received, we'd paid 5 grants out to individuals. We'd actually had 15 requests for support at that stage. 4 we were waiting further information and we were investigating. 6 were actually rejected because they weren't completed in full. I think one of the problems people are having is they have to have an NHS test and trace reference number. That's a key criteria of the scheme because it only applies to those who've been contacted by NHS test and trace and asked to self-isolate. But there has been a bit of confusion. Some people think that because they know somebody who's been infected that they can make that decision themselves to self-isolate and be entitled to a payment, which isn't the case. But we don't understand that people are having difficulties applying. We haven't had any complaints around that at all.
Good to hear.
With regard to how the allocation was arrived at, I think they did take deprivation into account. So it would have been based on population, but also deprivation as well.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Yeah, please, Andy.
Sarah, one of the sort of themes, I suppose, of the pandemic and the different things that have been done has been inconsistencies. And so when it comes to the discretionary element of our allocation, how consistent is it with sort of neighbouring boroughs? And can you sort of highlight to me what the major differences are, if there are any major differences, please?
So to be honest, there wouldn't really be any real differences other than the size of our allocations. So some authorities may have had a bigger pot to be able to distribute. I mean, there is some discretion in that we can decide that somebody is not really suffering financial loss. And that's why at the moment we've tried to keep it relatively wide criteria, but we might have to narrow it if we're finding we're inundated with applications.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else on this then? Okay, well, the recommendation is fairly clear that we accept that. The members happy to accept that? Great, thank you very much indeed. On then to another very big item, which is the white paper consultation planning for the future. And once again, there were lots of comments from CAP here, but let's take the report first. And Teresa, I guess it's over to you, is that right?
It is, yes, thank you.
But before you begin, I just want to say, I think, if I'm right, this is probably going to be your last cabinet member serving us as a cabinet in your role, and I just wanted to make that point before you spoke, so that you can say nice things about us too. But I have to say, you have been the most extraordinary person working in very extraordinary conditions. Dartford as a growth area, in terms of your work as a chief of regeneration, has been probably one of the most challenging jobs in the country. And not only have you had to cope with the usual ebb and flow of council business and the usual ebb and flow of policies coming out of Westminster at an extraordinary rate, but you've been doing so in an environment which hasn't really allowed much headroom for mistakes or for anything really. It's been the most dynamic and extraordinary period in Dartford's history. We've coped with some extraordinary applications and opportunities. You have ingrained yourself in the work of this borough and the work of this town generally. And for one, I just want to say how enormously grateful we are to you. We simply could not have done any of this without you. You're going to be a major loss to this authority, and I don't know how we're going to replace you. We'll try, but it is going to be very tough. And I just want to thank you both in terms of your professional conduct and the things you've helped us through, but also in terms of your personal, abilities here and your willingness to be personable with us, dealing with idiot cabinet members, dealing with members, all that kind of stuff. You've been incredibly patient, incredibly thorough, and we are going to really miss you. And so I wish you the very best of luck with your third age, whatever you choose to do with it. And I hope that our best wishes of this council go to you and your family. And thank you so much. You've been absolutely superb.
Well, thank you very much, Jeremy. I have really enjoyed my time at Dartford. As you say, it's been very challenging, very exciting, and I am really proud of the work I've done with my team. It's always been with the support of my team, done some great work. And of course, it's been great working for Dartford Council. I have worked for other authorities, and I can truly say there is nowhere quite like Dartford. And I genuinely mean that, in that things do get done and decisions do get made. And it just makes it, as an officer, a lot easier and able to actually affect change, having a council that is willing to make decisions and move things forward. So thank you to you and all the members for my time, for giving me the opportunity.
Right. Your time on this report has now run out. So does anybody else want to give us a pressy on this report?
Okay, so you'll recall that the last cabinet there was a report presented about short-term changes to the planning system that's mainly related to housing numbers. The current consultation paper, the white paper, is much more wide-ranging, much longer-term and substantial changes to the planning system. And they will be implemented over a much longer time frame, and there's still a lot of decisions to be made about the detail of how they'll be implemented. As I said, they're wide-ranging. They cover a wide range of issues, including reform of the local plan system. There'll be a range of new categories of planning applications proposed, increased digitisation of the planning system, and a greater focus on design quality in the through planning. So, and also in terms of developer contributions and infrastructure, proposals for a new infrastructure levy, which would replace existing processes. There is merit in some of the proposals. For example, the focus on digitisation could result in improved efficiencies, faster decision making, and free up planning officers. Also, obviously, we support an increase and emphasis on urban design. But as well as that, there are concerns which have been set out in the response, which is at Appendix B. And there are concerns particularly around the reduced level of local decision making, both by members, but also reduced input by local residents in how local planning applications impact on them. And there's also seemingly an oversimplified approach to major development, which could make it quite difficult to achieve positive change, particularly somewhere like Dartford, where there are such big areas of change. So, as I said, the response is set out in Appendix B. We are on a very tight deadline now for responding, and the time runs out at 11:45 p.m. tonight. So we're ready to pass on our comments to government. But if there are any further comments or changes members may wish to make, we will try and incorporate them before that, if possible.
Thank you. So let me get this right. We could ruin your evening of watching Holmes Under the Hammer and the Great British Bake Off by asking you to rewrite this by 11:45. Is that right?
I'm sure you wouldn't. You would refrain from doing that, Chair. Having it has been public, as you know, and been considered by CAP.
Okay.
CAP were very supportive. You'll see from the minutes of the response.
Yeah. I won't really draw CAP into it because, as you say, I think they were. It sounds like a very amiable meeting on Monday, and I think it looks to me as if they were fully behind the drift of this. Is there any other member want to talk about this? No, okay. I mean, my final reflection on it is that I do think sometimes that we get punished really for other councils' misdemeanours, and if only they could base their planning systems and planning rules around the way and the diligence we show, I think actually we'd be in a much better position. And I do get the feeling that there are some councils out there that don't take their planning responsibilities as seriously as we do, and then government has to intervene. And rather than intervening with policies directed at those councils, it intervenes with policies directed at all of us. It's a bit of a shame, really, because I think think we've kind of got the good balance here. I am worried about the diminishing role of the residents' voice. It's exactly what we should be capturing more of, not less of. And I'm also got a concern. You might answer this question for me. I'm also a little bit concerned about the role of building control with some of these automated kind of yeses. I mean, is there no danger that we could actually have some applicants just dropping out of the system altogether and us not being aware of development? I mean, or is that all still robust inside it? I must admit, it's not an area I've looked at in great detail. You might just tell me that's nonsense and everybody has to report everything they do. But whenever they talk about automatic zones of development, you worry that it's going to take place and no one will know it's taking place. And then we've got building control worries.
Well, there will be fewer planning applications or standard planning applications as we know them now. In one of the zones identified for growth, it's intended that there would be far less recourse to planning applications, and the inclusion of areas and sites within that would provide permission in principle, an approval in principle, but they would still need to submit technical details that would have to be examined and assessed. And they would still need to register the development. I mean, we don't have the details of that yet, but I would expect that they would need to register it and certainly apply for technical approval. But
Okay.
yes, generally it's true that there will be certainly less scope for local residents to get involved. And we know from experience with permitted development applications where there isn't the normal consultation, that residents find that very difficult once the development has been built, because they do feel that things that impact them negatively have not been, they've not had the opportunity to comment on. So
Yeah.
it does give rise to a lot of dissatisfaction.
Okay, yeah, not really a good step. But anyway, thank you for that response. Is there anyone else? I've just had a text from Chris Shipham saying that, which I won't read for a number of reasons, saying that his internet has gone down. So I think he might try and get back. He may not, but he's given his apologies now. Okay, anyone else on this then? Okay, well, it seems you're off the hook, Teresa, in terms of your working till 11:45. So you now press a button, do you? Is it on your desk and you're going to press a button and send it, or what?
No, Mark Kaplan's going to send it. He has his desk. He's apparently watching it.
How exciting. Right, okay. Go on then, Mark, you send it. No, wait. Right, okay, that's gone. Members happy with that then? Thank you. Great. Item 9 then is the formal parking consultation responses in the West Hill ward for Shepherd's Lane. Let's try and move through this fairly rapidly. I think this is a good situation, really. CAP did deal with, sorry, there wasn't CAP actually. There were some responses from residents, weren't there, which we took into it. Is anyone going to speak to this, or are we just going to move on with it? Let's do it officers first. Do we need to speak to this or not?
If I can speak to it if you would wish.
Really briefly, just really briefly then.
Well, this is to do with the activities at Dartford Boys Grammar School and how they impact on residents at 1A to 59 Shepherd's Lane, and the proposal is to extend the hours of control from currently Monday to Friday 9:30 to 4 to Monday to Sunday 9:30 to 8 p.m. Because there are activities outside the normal school day which are impacting on residents and parking taking place outside their homes. There was a previous consultation in March 2019. There was a very high level of response. 81% of households responded, and there was a majority in favour of the extension. This is the formal consultation now. We've had just 7 responses, which is normal for the formal, final formal consultation. There have been 4 objections and 3 in support or no objection. We have considered the objections. They're concerned that there's only 1 parking bay per household. Also concerned that that visitors' permits may reduce the ability for households to park and generally just a view that there would be less parking for residents. Obviously, the intention is to provide more parking for residents by reducing visitors to the school, and given the wider benefits of the scheme for the residents, it's recommended that the scheme is approved and that the TRO process is progressed.
Yeah, I think, as often happens here, sometimes residents can be looking at other issues and sort of making points about that. And I think in this case, it's about the number of spaces they had available for each car in each house. And I think that's clearly measured out in terms of the space available. And what we're doing here today won't disimprove that, but what it will do is means that there's far less chance of people taking up the spaces otherwise in the road from activities at the school. And I ought to say also, this isn't anti-school. The school has got really good traffic management potentials and management protocols in place for events and evening things at the school. It's just that some parents and visitors choose not to use them. So I think in many ways this is good for the school and good for us as well. I had Andy Lloyd. Sorry, Andy.
Just a very quick question, Chairman, if I may. With all these things, we like to know that there is local member support to the scheme. It's not indicated on the report, but are the local members in support of this?
Richard.
Yeah, as far as I know, they are. They've given no indication otherwise, and then they didn't say so at the cabinet advisory the other day. So yeah, as far as I'm aware, they are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I make? I was going to make another point. Is that right?
Yeah, please, Richard. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I actually am in support of this. I think the scheme that was there already is the sort of scheme we would have for a school. So as the school's grown, what we're talking about here is not just a school. We're talking about a school, a leisure centre, a community space, and entertainment venue. So what all it's essentially doing here is to update the parking restriction in the nearest houses to reflect what the grown facility next to it. So yeah, I think it's. I understand the reservations some of the residents have, because they always. I mean, if you've got a restriction outside your house and you can't always park your second car there, you completely understand that. But I think on balance, this is a scheme that should go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Well, we've had a rounded discussion on that. As I say, CAP dealt with it and endorsed recommendations. Are we going to follow them and say yes? Great, that's fine. Thank you so much. Item 10 then is the proposed London resort and the duty of the applicant to consult the council on the proposal. And you have that report in front of you. Teresa, again, we're working you hard on your last cabinet. Is she still there? Has she gone? There you are.
Yes.
Sorry, I found you. Sorry. Yeah. Do you want to give us a quick pressy into this?
Okay. So this is the fifth round, latest round of consultation on the project. Which with the first consultation having been in 2014, so quite a lot of time has elapsed since then. The consultation ended on 25th of September, so this is being brought to members for information, with the actual response having been agreed under delegated powers with members. It's that the proposal, as I'm sure members are aware, is very wide-ranging, comprises many different elements, and these are all set out at paragraph 3.13 of the report. But I'm sure members are aware that it will comprise themed rides and attractions, event spaces, theatres, cinemas, ancillary retail, dining, entertainment, even housing, the approach road from the A2 Ebbsfleet Junction, a dedicated road, conference and convention centre, and all the back office facilities. So it is a very complex development. The council's comments and covering letter are set out at Appendix A. We've also provided comments on the draft development consent order and suggested heads of terms for the section 106. At this stage, we haven't provided very detailed comments because of the significant gaps which remain in the assessment. So it's difficult to weigh up to understand what the benefits of the scheme will be, or what the negative impacts will be, or or even to, because those aren't clear, to consider what mitigations could be put in place. We appreciate that the London Resort has the potential to bring significant economic benefits to the borough through jobs, employment, skills development, and potentially a major boost to the local economy. But these things aren't a foregone conclusion, and unless the right measures are in place, that may not happen. So, and we know we will also need significant mitigations to address the negative impacts. So we are working with LRCH to try and clarify the gaps at the present time, and we'll continue to engage with them up to submission of their application to the Planning Inspectorate. At the moment, well, they propose to submit by the end of December 2020. That is a very short time scale to complete the amount of work that we consider that still needs to be done. But we will continue to impress on them the need to carry out the full assessment and if necessary to extend the timetable to allow that to happen. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I mean, this is one of those things. If we were 10 or 15 miles away from this as a local authority, we would be, I'm sure, wanting to give it every support and assistance, and we'd be saying what a great opportunity it is for local people to attend and enjoy and take part in and get jobs at and improve skills from. All those arguments are right, but we have to remember this is on our doorstep, and I think we have a real duty to defend and protect local residents from this. This isn't an anti-report; it's actually just a report that says here are the gaps that need to be filled, and you've got to let us know. You've got to demonstrate that both on the positive side of the agenda, the things that potentially could come to Dartford will come to Dartford, and on the negative side of the agenda, you've got to demonstrate what the mitigations are for the things we're concerned about. And I don't think we as a responsible authority can allow that to slide. So I think there is time, not much between now and December, but there is time. And I think the ball is back in LRCH's court really to let us know that they've done that work, and that I'm sure the commitment I'd like to make on behalf of the council is that we will go that extra mile to make available our resource to help them and to support them in making sure it's very clear what we want and the information we need, and that if that's forthcoming and if it's satisfactory, then we'll say so. But I don't think we can't work on the basis of a wing and a prayer, and we do have to make sure we've got full possession of that information and detail, because we have to remember that our clients, such as they are our residents, and they will expect us to protect them and defend them and do the right thing. So that's how I see it. And I think Cabinet Advisory Panel on Monday took the same view. They were very happy with the response and endorsed it. There were a lot of comments actually, but to be fair, there were a lot of comments from CAP, but to be fair, they were all in line with what we were saying we wanted, and I don't think there was anything inside the CAP discussion that went against the grain of what we were asking for. So I won't go into repeating it all, but I'm grateful to CAP for raising some of the detail amongst some of the threads that we were looking at, things like demand on fast track and whether the local roads can cope. All those things were all very legitimate, and but they're all wrapped up in our headline concerns really. Is there anybody else want to come in on this? Yeah, please, Andy.
Sorry. Obviously, I support the report. It's a bit retrospective because, as you've said, the response has already gone in. And we had a meeting on 10 days ago with the company, and so pretty much explained that these are the reservations we have. These are the things that we want you to knock down, the skittles, because overall it would be brilliant if you could, and we get the result. What have they done in the last 10 days, Teresa? Have they engaged with you? Because this was the problem. They weren't really engaging and satisfying your concerns.
Well, we have got a few outstanding queries that we were expecting from them that we haven't yet received, but we will continue to pursue those. We are setting up meetings with their consultants, and we've been providing information to them. So I assume that there is work going on behind the scenes to try and fill the gaps. That so far it's the information is going to them. We're still waiting for it to come back to us.
If I might, Chair, I didn't explain my question well enough. I think we had very clearly articulated what our concerns were, and as far as I could see, that they want our support, and there was a good list of things that they could have just chopped off one after the other by engaging with you, which they didn't appear to have been doing up to now. And so my question really was, have they started that engagement and started working through your list? Or are they just trying to blunderbust it through with it would be brilliant for the world and let's get on with it?
They haven't yet come back to any of the issues that we specifically raised at that meeting, and requests that we put to them. Okay. As my recollection was, we had asked them to respond to the issues we'd set out in the consultation, provide a response to us. That hasn't yet been received. We have asked them to provide us with a draft of the skills and employment strategy. We're still awaiting that, and we have asked for a start of discussions on the Section 106 heads of terms. So we are still awaiting that.
Okay. I think we're doing the right thing, though. I mean, I appreciate this report went in, and therefore it's only for noting. But of course, it was the starting gun, really. We still have time to adjust and submit again or change our views. But I think we've done absolutely the right thing by putting a report which very, very clearly outlines our problems, and it has now transferred that responsibility. I too would hope that LRCH will get onto us very quickly and literally line by line go through our concerns and try and deal with them. But it's better for us to have submitted that report and to have that sitting there on the desk as a kind of a concern for LRCH going into the planning process, and it's then for them to address it really and move forward with us. And I'd much rather have done that than held back on a report or a response until we had these answers on our desk. That can drive us into impossible deadlines, and we're then not heard. So I think what we've done is right. We've made our points, and if LRCH wish to correct them now, they have an opportunity to do so, and I think that's fine. However, I do want to make clear again that if those points can be addressed, and if this can be a good neighbour to our community, then there are opportunities. I was looking again at the Labour part, the Dartford Labour manifesto, talking about this in recent elections, and they were very clear. They took the view this was absolutely great for Dartford, would be supporting it. Now we take a similar view, but we do have reservations about a number of things, including skills and how it's going to affect local people. So I think if we can get that resolved, we are in a good position. But we've done the right thing with this report, and I think it's right for noting. Is there anyone else want to talk about this? And welcome back, Chris. You got your internet sorted. Well done. Okay, members happy then? Thank you. Item 11 then is the draft private sector discretionary assistance policy. Again, this just seems all good news, this really, but a bit more flexibility for us. But Mrs. Green, do you want to? Is this your area?
It is, Chairman, yes. And I think it is good news. Good news for residents of Dartford. It proposes to you a new private sector discretionary assistance policy. It looks to very much increase the quantum of support that we can give, particularly to enable residents to remain living safely and independently in their own homes, and hopefully to avoid hospital admissions. And if people do have to go into hospital, then again, we're able to offer them support such that they can be discharged safely to a suitable home environment. The big change in this policy to the previous one is that these grants are not repayable. We had the situation with the rules of the previous policy where they were repayable, but only repayable on the resident selling their home and moving on, which didn't happen very often. And also the grant would be written off and not required to be repayable should the recipient unfortunately die. So we actually got very, very few of the grants repaid. This seeks to change that situation, I think, to the betterment of all concerned, really. Happy to take any questions, Chairman.
Thank you. Is anybody on this? I've got one quick point, which is about the availability of occupational therapists in terms of doing the assessments for work. Is that still a problem?
Not so much as it used to be, because we do part fund an occupational therapist ourselves. So we have, through this funding, we have been able to put additional resource in there. Cool.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else on this then? Okay, well, Cabinet Advisory Panel again reached the conclusion that they endorsed the recommendations and they made the points that it was indeed a positive step forward for us. So thank you to them. Members happy then? Thank you. On then to item 12, which is the Kent and Medway Energy and Low Emissions Strategy.
Yep, that's me again, Chairman. The Kent and Medway Energy and Low Emissions Strategy is brought to you tonight, and we're asking that you commit to support it, to endorse the strategy and its aims. This has been this piece of work has been led by the top tier authorities, but in collaboration with all of the districts. It has broad support across Kent. I believe it's been to the Kent Chief Execs and Leaders Forum and was broadly supported in those places. And the strategy, which is attached to the document, sets out the background and the priorities, 10 priorities, which start on page 313 of the Cabinet agenda. The report then goes on to describe several of the Council's projects which fit with the strategy, which contribute to its aims and priorities, and proposes that we'll bring a further report to you in around 6 months' time with an action plan which will enable us to point out how our processes, policies, projects can link with the strategy and help to achieve the outcomes of the strategy. Thank you.
Great. Well, it's nice when you actually get a report like this, which you know nobody could unreasonably argue with the aims, could they? Or nobody could reasonably argue with the aims. It's really just about the debate on how we get there. And I think this is a big major step forward in terms of outlining some real meaningful policies. We will have reminders from the public and from real world. I mean, whenever you have these strategies, the key point is whether they survive impact with the real world. And I think we've seen in some of the work with the cycle lanes in some parts of the country where, frankly, the ambition hasn't survived impact with the real world, and we've had to make revisions. But I think Kent is very well placed, and Kent seems to have sort of a quite intelligent client approach to this, and they seem to be responsive to real things happening. So it looks to be like a really, really good strategy for me. But anyone on this? No, everybody happy then? Cool, thank you very much indeed. On then to our B items now, I think we've reached, which is the item 13, the Environmental Health Partnership and proposed disengagement by Sevenoaks District Council. A bit disappointing here, but it does give us some opportunities. Mrs. Green.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The report is to inform you that Sevenoaks District Council have decided to disengage from the Environmental Health Partnership, the joint service that we have had with Sevenoaks since 2012. As Chairman says, it is disappointing. It's an excellent service. It's provided very good quality services to residents of both boroughs. But this is a decision that Sevenoaks District Council have taken. We cannot change that decision. What we have to do now is to put in place the processes to enable Dartford to again run its own freestanding environmental health service. And the report sets out some of the issues that we may have. and the ways in which we will look to deliver that. Don't have an absolute timescale at the moment. The aspiration, as the report says, is to the end of this financial year, but until we've been through the preliminary workshops across the various strands, it's not possible to know whether that is achievable at the moment. I've also given you a broad indication of the likely additional, or the scale of additional funding that may be needed to return the service to a standalone state. I have to stress that that is only an estimate and based purely on the savings that the partnership has delivered on an annual basis. Until we've done the detailed work, I won't know to what extent that's, a good estimate or a bad estimate, frankly.
Okay.
Happy to take questions, Chairman.
Thank you. And I confess I'm not helping that debate over finances, because the challenge I've set is to come back better. And I think, EH is one of those services which is not always in the great eye of public awareness, but quite honestly, public health depends upon it, society health depends upon it, local civic health depends upon it, good restaurants and hospitality quality depends upon it. They do a huge amount of work across a huge range of businesses, enterprises, and things that make our community tick. And I think what I'm suggesting we do in response to this is to meet the challenge by saying we'll come out of this better. And it's not just about managing; it's actually about coming up now with a new model of the service which really, really reflects the need going forward and to do it better. And I think we can do that. And so we are prepared to invest. I think we're going to have to be, and to make sure we get this absolutely right. Just to reassure people, I think the real value of the merger was in terms of resilience. It meant that we didn't have to, or we could share some of the risks in terms of staff resilience and getting to the point where perhaps we hadn't reached the point of momentum or the point of economies of scale in some areas. Clearly, we now need to make sure we deliver those services alone. So we have identified, I think it's true to say, Mrs. Green, where those real challenges are. We have really excellent people working within our authority for the partnership, and I think they're going to meet the challenge for us and help us. I think we've got a good working environment here for those staff, and I think that we've got a real challenge of a wonderful community to serve too. So I'm optimistic, and I just want to make the point that I think we do need to reflect upon the fact that this is going to require some investment, but it's done for the right reasons, and it will really deliver a better service. And standards is the key to this. We have to make sure our standards are as high as we can feasibly make them. Anyone else on this? Yeah, please, Andy.
I don't really want to speak to environmental health. I wanted to talk about the broader, thank my wife for a cup of coffee. I wanted to speak about the broader.
Don't drink it till we put a thermometer in it. We'll send an EH officer around to make sure it's hot enough. Don't scald yourself.
So I suppose a little bit of history for people which are not familiar. One of the ways in which we were able to support no rise in our council tax for years on end through this period was through these strategic partnerships, where we took the back office work that the residents don't really see and merged them with other authorities, and Sevenoaks being the principal, to get economies of scale. Now, things like revenue and benefits, fraud, audit, collections, these things really have delivered great benefits for us and good working partnerships. I've been to Sevenoaks office many times to see the team and work with them on this stuff. What is behind, and I don't need to know, I'm not trying to criticise Sevenoaks at all, but what is behind this? Is this an isolated thing, or is it likely we're going to see a breakdown to some of the other partnerships as well? Because that could be serious for us.
I can't really comment as to the rationale behind it. There is no suggestion at the moment that the same line will be pursued with the other partnerships that we're involved in with Sevenoaks in. I do know that Sevenoaks is also disengaging from its building control partnership, which it has with another Kent local authority. So the strategy is not confined to environmental health, but at the moment, it doesn't seem to be across all of the partnership areas. I would also just comment and make the point that, of course, environmental health is not a back office function. It's very much frontline service. And one of the particular difficulties that we have at this particular time is that we are in the midst of a pandemic in which environmental health officers are front and centre of both the demand and the operational response. And we also will shortly have to deal with any implications of the UK's exit from the EU. And it is quite likely that environmental health officers will have a part to play in that as well. So this does come at a very busy time for environmental health, and at a time when environmental health officers are in short supply and great demand. So I'm very pleased to hear Chairman's comments. We will do our very best to make the service as attractive as we can. I am very confident that we will be able to retain and to recruit. And indeed, Sevenoaks will face exactly the same difficulties as we do. The whole point of the partnership has been that we have shared resources, and we have had expertise in some areas and they have provided expertise in other areas. So we will both have to recruit the missing expertise, as it were. We have to fill the gaps. So there are some opportunities, there are challenges, and there's an awful lot of work to do to bring this to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you. I will just address also the issue of the non-service resilience. I mean, we've talked about the service resilience being important. Andy's raised the issue about the kind of corporate resilience in relation to funding and things like council tax. I think it's worth making the point that we went into these partnerships at different times in the political cycle and the finance cycle when things were looking very bleak. And what's interesting is that through this pandemic, and nobody could have obviously seen this come, it's very clear that many councils across the land were operating on a very, very low veneer of safety in terms of their financial position. And Dartford it has been exposed through this as being not one of those authorities, because we have an extraordinarily good range of financial controls and an extraordinarily prudent approach to finances. So I think actually the debate about the direct causal link between some of these partnerships and our council tax is kind of has now been broken over time, because I think there are other things we do which are now protecting that position. And I think it has been interesting that I think Sherry was absolutely right not to get involved in the discussion about why they made this decision. It's entirely up to them, and it's not for us to question or even know why they made this decision. But I will make a more general point, and I promise you it's a general point, not linked to this at all, in that I know councils are in very difficult positions we're all in now in terms of trying to plan ahead post-COVID as to where we go. And I think it's very awkward, very difficult to make those decisions. Sevenoaks is a very well-run council, and it's got a lot of focus on the future. And I think what they've done is made a decision based upon what they need to do in terms of making sure they continue to serve their residents. I'm very clear as part of that creative discussion with them that we're very clear on focusing on our residents, and that's what we'll do. And we will absolutely commit to this service, which is not, as you say, a back office service, 100% frontline service, well, largely frontline service. And I think we'll make that investment. Okay. Anyone else on this? No. Okay, fine. Well, we're not happy with that report, but we at least approve it. Yeah.
Sorry, Jeremy. I was.
Oh, sorry. Anne, yes, go ahead. I was just going
to quickly say, because I was just thinking it through and things like that. And I think there is the challenge there, but I think there is the opportunities. And given the previous conversations we've had about investment and things going to happen to us in the future, with a major hospitality resort coming and things like that, I think, in a way, that's for someone who's looking for a career and where we're going to look at this academy and the skills. I think that might be one of the areas that we ought to say this is where there's going to be a real need for this, because there will be a lot of challenges there with that particular facility coming to the area. That's more.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And it's not just about challenges, it's about career interest as well. And I mean, I'm pleased Teresa's still in the conversation, because I think one of the things that we can offer here in Dartford to people dare I say, at either ends of their career, are really, really good opportunities to work on some they are global projects, really. Certainly very European significant projects, certainly national significant projects. And in the world of environmental health, I suspect there are councils up and down the country where the work is actually quite restricted and restrained. And I think here we've got massive opportunities. And the one thing we've done in all this time, we've been colleagues together working steering this council since 2003, is we've recognised it's not about administration, it's not about bureaucracy, it's not about structures, it's not about charts, it's about people. And it's the people out there that we serve, and also it's giving interest and development and opportunities to the people inside our organisation as colleagues. We have a hugely stable approach to our work with our colleagues, and I think that's reflected in an appreciation that actually we're a good employer and we have the right enlightened approach to these matters. And so I hope that environmental health colleagues who we value greatly will understand and appreciate that, and we'll have to go forward together and see what's out there. But it won't be for want of trying that we put in place a superb EH service to do our town proud. Okay, anyone else on this? Okay, that's fine then. Thank you very much indeed for that. Item 14 is the review of the management of the housing revenue account garage portfolio. So let's go up and over on this.
Did you want me to?
Yeah, go on then. Yeah. Tom.
Okay. So this is.
Sorry, that sounded like I wasn't interested in that. I'm hugely interested. That was a bit dismissive then. That yeah. I didn't mean that. I mean, yes, please. Really interested. Garages.
Yes. Well, okay. So this is a proposal which will hopefully make our garages a little bit more interesting to everybody else as well, because we do have a fairly high vacancy rate, void rate on our garages. They are not in a particularly good state at the moment, and indeed it is debatable whether they even function terribly well as garages. They are fairly small. You would probably struggle to get many of the modern cars inside them, and we do know that many of the people who rent garages do not use them for parking a car in. They're used for storage of other goods and chattels. We have chosen to focus our capital programme on maintaining and developing our stock, our housing stock, on the basis that the council is in the business of accommodating people, not vehicles. But nonetheless, parking is very important. It's an important issue in many parts of Dartford. And we feel that if managed in such a way as to provide safer, secure parking, this could have a real benefit both to the council and to residents. The proposal is such that we will not particularly lose income whilst investment is put into the garages. We do reserve the right to work with whoever we procure to undertake this for us, that we may look at some of the sites and we may decide to do something differently with them. It's quite likely that some will be repurposed as flat surface secure parking. Some may have garages rebuilt on them to a higher spec, more modern design. And it is possible that there may be the odd site that we can do something else with. I mean, members are aware that one of our latest new build sites at Gilbert Close is on a garage site where the vacancy rate was such that it was really no longer serving a purpose as a garage site, and we are building some much needed housing units on it. So I think this is a really positive proposal, Chairman, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yep, I 100% agree. Anybody on this? All right. Well, despite my introduction to it, Sherry's absolutely right. It's a really, really important thing. This, and it's one of those areas where I think, as a council, we express frustration because it's the sort of thing that the private sector does so much better. When they have a problem like this, they can repurpose, they can move and adapt. For us, it takes quite a long while to turn the ship around, and I'm really grateful that we are now, because I think that we have moved on societally. There's certainly a demand for parking spaces, but is there a demand for garages that are too small and not practical and linked to someone else and far from your front door? I'm doubtful, and I think we've got to look at the repurposing of it and take people with us, and develop a real modern stock. And I think that's what this work does. It's my frustration, if anything, is it's taken a while to get here, and I think that's perfectly understandable because we've had there's a tipping point with them, isn't there, when you have a block of garages where 4 of them are in use and 6 of them aren't. What do you do with the 4? You don't want to create disruption and discord. You press on, you press on, you press on. I think we've reached the tipping point now where we can see a vision for the whole stock, and it's really, really good to have a strategy about it. And I know that Mr. Dosad and others will steer it very, very well. So yeah, fine. Members happy with this? Great, thank you very much indeed. Item 15 then is the Capital Programme Monitoring Report, and this was a subject of some debate at CAP, and I quite understand why. Let's deal with it all generally first, and then we'll deal with the specifics of Acacia Hall, which I think, frankly, we ought to do responsibly. So in terms of the report, Mrs. Marty, just want to quickly just run us through any of the big heads, and leave Acacia Hall out for a minute. We'll talk about that separately.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So this presents the latest progress against the capital programme for 2021, and as detailed in the report, it sets out the main variances against each of the capital schemes. So it talks about the new homes, and this is where we get the one-for-one receipts that we might not necessarily spend within the deadline that the government has given us. So there's a possibility that we may have to pay some of that monies back. Obviously, we're doing everything we can to try and talk to the MHCRG to make sure we can reduce or hopefully not have to pay monies back. It also talks about some of the other projects where we've had underspends. Mainly has been underspends this year, and that's where obviously COVID has come into play and some of the projects have been delayed. But there wasn't anything else in particular that I wanted to highlight, because obviously the main variance, as you said, is in respect of Acacia Hall.
Okay. All right. Well, let's deal with Acacia then. I mean, what we're reporting here is a overspend of £900,000 roughly, and we've given a list of all the work there. And I think you can certainly have a sort of intake of breath when you read the highlight number, but the key to this in terms of decision making is to look at the detail and see where it's been spent. And I want to address something that cropped up on at Cabinet, which was about whether we'd had sufficient headroom in the budget and whether there was a sufficient reserve in the budget for this work. It's very difficult if we assigned very, very open and luxurious amounts of reserve and headroom in every budget we did, we would effectively consume all of our capacity or financial capacity with a very few projects. And the truth of the matter is that most of our projects do come in pretty much on time and pretty much on schedule. Some don't. And when they don't, we obviously have to make these virements and move it over. But I'm convinced, and I'm listening, my ears are open. If there is an accounting system out there that says, well, actually, you should look at the worst scenario in everything you do, I can listen to that. But I think it's better for us to effectively look at a sensible level for everything we do, and then be prepared when these things happen to make the virements to address them. Otherwise, our accounts, I think I'm right in saying, Sarah, if every capital project we embarked on, we put on this kind of a huge amount of potential risk spend at the end, or overhead, or not overhead, but you know what I mean, over budgeting for it in order to take into account any contingency, our budgets would look absolutely huge, and we'd then be reporting colossal underspends at the end of them. And I think it's best that we do it this way, but it does mean that as politicians, we have these rather awkward moments when we say in meetings like this, we've overspent by 900 grand. But the key I would say to people is please look at the detail. now. Some of it was COVID related, and I'm absolutely, the message has gone out from my office right across the council that we're not one of those councils that talks about COVID all the time as responsibility for everything that happens. But in this case, it's absolutely plain that having started the work at a very inopportune time, literally around the turn of the year, we got people on site. We'd stopped up rivers, we'd done all these things, and then suddenly you have to stop doing that for quite an extended period. You've got to pay for the work that goes on, you've got to pay for the reserve of the material that's on the site, you've got to come back to the site and realize that things like some of the work on the rivers have actually will have to be done again now because of the delay and the time that's gone by without being progressed. And then on top of that, we've uncovered some things which, again, when you're looking at a building of this or a set of buildings and structures of this age, isn't altogether surprising when you open them up. It's just the fact that we operate in a large scale scenario. So the sort of things that happens to all of us domestically when you start a piece of work and you realize that, that lovely tile you were going to move has actually now turned into 36 tiles, and underneath it there's something even worse to worry about. I'm afraid when that happens to us in a corporate environment, it can be very large sums of money. Fortunately, as we've said here, we do have headroom across our budgets, and so we're not in a crisis on it. I just want to make an absolute commitment about the source of the environment, which is the open spaces and leisure budget. That's purely because during this period of COVID, we haven't been able to do the work on our playgrounds and our open spaces. There's just been no potential to do it. We haven't had the member of staff in place to do it. It would have been rather silly to recruit someone at the point when there was no work to be done. So now, as we're emerging, we are making the investment in the staff, and they're now in place, and we can go ahead and put this in. And I make a pledge that there will be no underfunding or shortage of funding for that work in the next budget. It'll have the appropriate amount of money for the first year of that project, and we'll see it through exactly as we intended to do. I do understand, however, let me say very clearly, I do understand it's perfectly legitimate for people to look at overspends like this and to question them and to ask why it is what it is. But what I would do is point them to the detail of it, what's happened, think logically about what the alternatives were, and you'll see where we are, and that's it. And I think what we'll end up with at Acacia is the most amazing project. It's extraordinarily complex. I think we've I don't know why we do it as a council, really. We keep on biting off more and more complicated projects all the time. This one involves water, land, grass, moving water, electricity, all sorts of things. It's a colossal complex project. Old buildings, new buildings, ugly buildings, beautiful buildings, and they've all had to be addressed. And I think in doing so, we've got to this point now where look at the overall budget of completion, and I think we'll still have something very, very much to be proud of. And it does fall within the headline of our budget. And the late Mr. Harris, who we'll be talking about in a minute, he always used to say, the budget you set at the in the beginning of the year is your umbrella of your spending. It's not the detail of your spending, it's the umbrella of your spending. And then you move around in the year, and that's where we stand. So there we are. But have I explained that properly, Mrs. Martin? Is there anything technically you want to say about it, or?
No, I don't think there's anything to add. Thank you.
Thank you. And the comment I was really, really pleased from the Cabinet Advisory Panel was from a member, and I honestly don't know who it was. It certainly wasn't anything planted, but it was someone who said, well, we appreciate the council's been transparent and honest and upfront about it. And trust me, that's the only way to be. If we're going to all sleep at night, it's the only way to be. Report how it is, explain how it's got there, and then make the right decisions from that point on. And so that's what we're doing. Okay. I did see a hand and I sort of talked over it. I'm sorry, I'm blundering on. So yes, Andy.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I definitely agree with you over the budgeting method. It's difficult to compare the private sector with public sector. In private sector, yes, you might well add a contingency, and you might well have contracts where you've got the contractor by the bits and to deliver on time, and you don't pay for their cock-ups or delays. But it doesn't work like that in public sector. It is the way it is. And we are very transparent. If we were to set budgets higher than what we actually needed, our suppliers would spend it. So it's right that we keep it tight, and we try and deliver under budget where we can, but except sometimes when it goes over, as for quite legitimate reasons as we have here. I mean, I point people to the cliff maintenance works, which come in under budget, which was exactly the same. We just do something and it costs less. I support the paper, of course. I know it, and thanks the team for giving me lots of briefings as we're going through. And again, I would endorse what you said before about the leisure budget, where this is coming from. I mean, there's been some completely inaccurate linkages between with scrapping projects because of this overspend. That just isn't true at all. Just haven't got round to doing them for reasons that we all understand. So, but I hope I'm clear on the budget method, because of our transparency on budget and how much we have to spend. I mean, it's the very worst position to negotiate from, and so therefore I don't think you should be setting a massive contingency, because you're just leaving yourself open to overspend on everyone.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you 100%, except perhaps the one thing at the beginning. I wouldn't want anyone to get the impression that somehow the public sector signs contracts that are disadvantageous to the private sector. We get best value. We do exactly as we do. But you're absolutely right. If we expose the amount of money that are in our budgets, as we have to do and the private sector don't, then quite frankly, the contracts will come in and consume that money for us. And I think that's the point you're making. We don't sign worse contracts in the private sector. It's just the fact that we have to be aware that if we put larger sums in at the beginning, larger sums will come out at the end. And in this case, it's much better. The nearest thing I can think of was Fairfield, where Fairfield, again, the so-called budget grew and then grew again. But actually, at the end of the work, we were still credited with having one of the most cost-effective and best value and, dare I use the word, cheapest renovations in the industry for that piece of work. And it just shows you, you've got to be, it's just different ways of budgeting. And as I say again, we don't want to be putting loads and loads of contingency into every budget when we don't need to, because it simply exposes to the world how much we are prepared to spend. And we'd lose an awful lot of it. So I think that was what you were saying, but that's fine. Anyone else on this? Anyone else? No. Okay, that's great. All right, well, thank you then. We've had that, and as I say, I'm open to if anybody wants to contact us about that and wants to see any more information about the Acacia work, I'm very happy. So I'm talking to those in YouTube land now. If you want to know more about the work, it's a fantastic piece of work, and it's going to be a real credit to Dartford when it's done. Which, even notwithstanding the delay, is only a few months away now. We'll be able to open it and start, and I'm very, very grateful to all the people who are working hard over there. Okay, thank you. So on the more general issue of the capital programme then, members happy to approve this? And the environment, yeah. Okay, thank you. Item 16 then is the street naming and numbering Littlebrook Power Station. Gives me enormous pleasure to bring this forward. We can hear from, is someone going to speak to this to start us off? No, it speaks for itself, really, doesn't it? We have the ability there to name 2 roads on the new estate, and the decisions or the recommendations in front of us are to call one Powerhouse, which sort of separates the fact that there's celebrates the fact of the history of the site and also the motivations of the new owner to make this a powerhouse for business. And it also establishes a link with the existing power station that was there. And then most tellingly and significant and movingly of all for us is the granting of a naming right to Harris, which is there's no other reason for it or meaning for it than the fact that Graham Harris worked tirelessly on this site to get it to this point. He worried for years and years and years about the outcome of the power station. Power station generated quite a lot of revenue for us that we depended upon in terms of business rates and in terms of other things, and provided some employment for people locally. And we worried for long periods of time. Graham expressed concerns about it as the gravity of our power system in this country shifted away from the viability of it. And when it disappeared, the amount of time that we've taken to get from having the power station to having operational businesses there, employing loads and loads of people in cutting edge industries and cutting edge logistics is just phenomenal. I don't think it's a secret now that it's an Amazon warehouse that's gone in there. It's not the sort of Amazon warehouse that generates huge amounts of local traffic. It's one of their big distribution centers which distributes out to the others. So everything's under control there in terms of the work, and Graham again was instrumental in bringing that forward. And I remember sitting in a room not 30 yards from here, and talking to the developers who came forward and said, we've just bought this site, we'd like to do something creative with it. And Graham worked night and day to come up with a really good vision for this that would help our borough, provide employment, raise skills, and also at the same time manage and mitigate some of the traffic issues that might have emerged from alternative uses. And he's a terrific piece of work. The one thing I will raise is that when you look at the map of the site, there is a long road and a short road, and I think what the long road feeds into the main roundabout at Littlebrook, and the long road and the short road is what you definitely call an estate road. I trust that we're in a position to express our preference that really Harris and whatever suffix is attached to it ought to be the community road. It ought to be the road that leads off the roundabout down towards the site, and that the estate road closest to the Powerhouse development ought to be called Powerhouse. We don't normally do that. We normally leave the distribution rather randomly to developers, but I wonder if we might just express ourselves in our response to them to say that we really do express that we'd like the community road, the longer community road, to be named after Harris, and the smaller estate road to be named Powerhouse. Does that make sense? Oh, I don't know if we're allowed to do that within our powers, but let's make the request. Is that okay? Did you want to come in, Sarah? You were trying to.
I was just going to say I'll certainly make that request to the officer. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed. Okay. Anybody else on this? Anybody want to say anything about it? No. Okay, well, I think we're all very happy to do that, and I don't know whether members of the Harris family are looking in. The report indicates that we've certainly made contact with them, and they're very happy for this to proceed. It's been a terrible year for them, and a terrible year for all of us, and made much worse, of course, by the fact that not all of us were able to say goodbye to Graham properly. And so, it's one of those things where these events happen, and it's a dreadful loss to us. And I hope in some ways we can start at least to pay a tribute to the man who did so much for this town. Okay, members happy with that then? Thank you very much indeed. We want to see items now. The Treasury Management Mid-Year Report 2020-21. This is going to be you. It's so exciting. It's got to be you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chairman. Not much that I really want to say about the report, other than we continue to hold significant levels of Treasury management investments. Members will be aware that in previous years we've well and truly exceeded our investment income budgets. As you'll no doubt be aware again, interest rates are very, very low at the moment, an all-time low. So that does mean that investment income will inevitably fall. However, we still expect to be able to reach our income budget this year, but won't see the significant overachievement of income that we've previously seen. Just want to reassure members that we are monitoring our investment levels very, very carefully and making sure that we're maximising liquidity and diversifying our portfolio as well to minimise any risk. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I've got one quick question, which was actually about, I think it falls into this, which is about our material investments in properties. Will we need to revisit some of the valuations on some of those, given the effects of coronavirus on them? I mean, in terms of their occupancy, or are we fairly safe? These are such long-term investments that it'll all come out in the wash in the end, or should we be reflecting the potential writing down of some of the values?
That would have been reflected in our annual accounts. It's something that is done on a regular basis that our valuer will undertake right. Our assets, and when we're aware that they're going to be a significant variance, then we would have to do that on an annual basis. Fine.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. All right. Anyone else on this? Yes, Andy.
Yes, the rules changed a couple of years ago where we have to now list those investments in our accounts and market valuations. So, as Sarah said, we've got that covered, I think. There's a fair bit in the report. First off, we are blessed by having some very skilled people in this area. People like sort of Catherine Bailey are just excellent, who works with Sarah and Tim. And also we have Feroza Katarak from Arlene Close that advise us. And she has an overarching view of what most councils are doing and what's going on in public finances. And us lay members of the Treasury Management Panel really do value her contribution to make sure that we're doing the right thing. for a casual reader of this report and the whole, that they would see that there's a lot of mention of debt in here, and I guess I ought to sort of reassure people that the council does not put itself into debt. We're not running at a budget loss. The debt in here relates to something which around 2012 we took a loan of £90 million to escape from a financing regime on our public sector housing, where we used to collect, for every £5 we collected, we paid a pound into a central pot, so we could only spend £4 on our own stock and our own maintenance. We brought ourselves out of that with this £90 million loan, which we've been drawing down. We're almost halfway through it now, and it's been a fantastic piece of management, and we've got another £5 million coming off in the next year. But that's what it's for. It's not because we're running a structural deficit or any other reason. But I notice it sort of slaps me in the face when I read it, but I know it inside out. And I just thought I'd reassure cabinet members that it's not a problem with our finances per se.
No, it's a good point. I mean, I remember that in this council, even in the late 1990s and moving into 2002-3, the council had a structural deficit, and it had a debt related to its ongoing work. And I think that's very different from us having the option to choose to take a debt to reduce our funding requirements down the line. It's looking ahead, isn't it? It's a bit like I'm going to get my financial terms terribly mixed up here, but it's a bit like a mortgage, really. You make a big outlay for something that you desperately need and want, and you take a while paying it back. But in our case, we seem to be paying it back quicker, which is obviously good news. And so it's very, very good. And I too am blessed to have people who can advise, because it's not a huge area of expertise for me, and it's very, very heartwarming to get reports that I can understand and begin to move forward on. So, members happy with this? Oh, yeah, that's fine. Thank you much indeed. Okay, that brings us on to the last item then, I think, tonight, which is the... oh, no, sorry, there's two more. We've got revenue budget monitoring, first of all. Sarah.
Thank you, Chairman. So this sets out the latest position on the revenue budgets for 2021. It is based on information as at the end of September. The detailed variances are set out in Appendix A to the report. It includes the extra spending that we're incurring as a result of COVID and the loss of income that we're also suffering as a result of COVID. One update I did just want to let members know about. On Appendix A, it details the grant funding that the council has received. Since this report was written, we have actually been notified that we've got an additional allocation of 491,000 towards our COVID pressures. So we're obviously monitoring that very closely so we can see how that relates to the additional costs that we're incurring. Thank you, Chairman.
I mean, if for our friends in watching this on YouTube, if you want to see where COVID is hitting us, and in terms of the way that newspapers and media write about the impacts on councils, this is probably it. And you see here a snapshot of revenue and income and changes that relate from that period. And you'll appreciate the story across the board is that, well, there were 4 months we didn't do anything, 3 months we didn't do anything, we were shut for 5 months, and this is where you'll see that reflected. But again, I will reinforce what Sarah has said. Actually, I'm not going to get into the big macro politics of it, but actually, when you look at what the government have given us, it's actually really quite helpful what they've done in providing us with grants. And whether it's enough, whether it'll take us all the way out of this, I don't know. But what I can say is that I think there are probably parts of the world where local authorities have been left to dwindle more than we have here in Britain. And actually, when you look at those grants, they do show the degree and also the timeliness of them as well. They seem to be coming through at the right moment to support us when things are getting tough. And so I just think that's worth making the point. But there we are. Okay, anyone else on this? No. Okay, members happy to note it then? Thank you very much indeed. That does bring us on then to the final item, I think, tonight, which is, from memory, the minutes of the Policy Overview Committee. Again, thank you to them for the work they do. It was an interesting meeting by the looks of it, lots of air quality talk and other things, all hugely important issues for us. And again, I really thank them for their work in looking forward, really. There are a couple of committees we've got. Scrutiny kind of looks back, but policy overview really looks forward. And I think in the circumstances we're in at the moment, that's exactly what we need to do. We all need to look forward and decide where we're going. None of us know really where we're going to go in terms of the coronavirus. The tier system is out there at the moment. We're in medium. That may change. I don't know. And I think we have to wait and see where the data takes us. All I would say is that, frankly, wherever we go, it's a reflection of our accurate position, and it's better for us to be grown up and having this conversation about where we stand. And I think the declaring ourselves to be a medium tier authority was very helpful in terms of communications for us. Gave us an opportunity to put out information about what people should be doing. My exhortation to everyone in Dartford is please carry on doing exactly what you can to help minimise the transmission of this disease and to protect our hospital and services, NHS services from demand. It's hugely, hugely important, and the tier system is there to reflect where we are, and it's an assessment we have to acknowledge. So there we go. Before we close, anybody got anything they want to say about anything we haven't raised tonight? No? Okay. So final words then for Teresa. Thank you again. I won't go over all the effusive comments, it'll spoil you. But thank you again. And I hope you have the best of luck in whatever you want to do, best of fortune, whatever you want to do. And have a great life beyond Dartford Borough Council, if such a thing is possible. To everyone else, thank you very much indeed. And see you again at the next meeting.